Let's have a look at a topic of discussion, the container deposit schemes. Each state has an implementation program for one, and in many cases they have one. South Australia led the way in this regard back in 1977 when it began its the container deposit scheme. I recall it as a young boy, 12 years old. I remember picking up the glass bottles. There were 10-cent ones and there were 20-cent ones. And if somebody was lucky enough to put a Halls or a Schweppes, a 20-cent bottle, like big Coke bottle, one of the big ones, if you remember them, made of glass, then you rushed that back to the canteen at the footy because that could buy you a pie and a drink. Yes, it was nice in those days when the deposit scheme was a lot. Then when 77 came, they introduced 3 cents on the Pickaxe branded beer bottles, and then from there it was 5 cents on a can and so on to be returned. It was then something that other states said that they needed to implement after South Australia went through the whole process and was the only state for many years that was doing it. There were a lot of problems with cans being run across state borders and all sorts of things that went on. Then, of course, the cans and milk cartons and other things have been included in it. It's been really an important thing for sporting clubs and for scout clubs particularly, but do they miss out with the New South Wales scheme that began in 2017? Is that too corporatised? In Victoria, where we do not have a scheme as yet, they're reviewing the 2023 beginning of a scheme. Scouts Victoria's most recent annual report said that they are likely to be looking at this decision and participate in this container deposit scheme, but it appears there are a wide range of options to how scouting in Victoria might participate, potentially in a profitable can and bottle recycling program, and this could become a major venture, and there will need to be a broad input as to the options for not-for-profit groups are defined within the Victorian scheme. When South Australia, it's worked for around 45 years, so one would suggest that the scheme has had some merit and has been able to iron out a lot of the problems, and one would suspect that there may well need to be a national approach to this, particularly with the laws surrounding the restraint of trade between states and so forth in relation to the differences within each of these schemes. But for me, it is a good option, albeit if you look at the statistics, and this is where it gets really interesting, that there is not a lot of overall waste that's saved from landfill by the deposit container schemes. About 77% of beverage containers in South Australia are returned. You'd reckon that figure would be where it would end up being for most of the other states, and that only 2.8% of all litter is comprised in these containers. And so the deposit scheme, while it is seen as a beacon of recycling, it may indeed not actually produce very much value, albeit it costs a lot in terms of the government's support for it. So a very interesting topic of discussion as it's reflected on in New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia, with the differences in each state and in each scheme and in who benefits from it.